Fish can be found in basically any body of water, sometimes right in plain view and other times tucked away in those hard-to-reach places. In order to find food, protection, and suitable water, they move around. If you're able to locate the areas that offer these things, you'll increase your odds in finding fish. But it's not always an easy task. Let's talk about why. Fish are ectothermic, which means they can't regulate their own body temperature. In order to find warmth or cool down, they have to adjust their position in the water column. In addition to keeping warm, their feeding habits and activity also fluctuate with temperature. Water contains dissolved oxygen, which fish use to breathe. Without it, they can't survive. The amount of oxygen in the water is dictated mainly by temperature. The warmer the water, the less oxygen. And the reverse is true. Fish move to find the conditions that best suit their needs. So if the temperature is wrong or they can't breathe, they won't stay in that spot for long. It's also important to note that oxygen is introduced to the water through photosynthesis from plant life or turbulence from wind and rough areas. Fish are prey to birds, mammals, other fish, and humans, so those with good instinct seek areas to shelter themselves. Fish are also predators of insects, birds, other fishes, and small mammals, so they find areas to conceal themselves and ambush their prey. Bushes, undercut banks, and foam all offer overhead protection from predators, while boulders, grass, and laydowns provide hiding spots within the water. Some of these features may also offer areas of slower current, which can provide fish with a place to rest and conserve energy. Other times, they sit in these pockets of soft water and watch for food forms to drift into their feeding lane. Two terms that you're going to read about at some point are structure and cover. Structure is the bottom contour of a water body, which fish use for feeding, resting, and navigation. Things like channels, drop-offs, humps, underwater bars, or any change in depth. Cover is what we find on the structure. Basically any feature used for concealment. This could be an overhanging branch, docks, undercut ledges, laydowns, vegetation, and so on. Before we get specific on where to find fish, let's talk a little about the hydrologic cycle. It's going to seem irrelevant at the moment, but it will be valuable when we cover conservation later in the series. The water cycle, as it's also known, is a process of describing the continuous movement of water between the Earth and atmosphere. You'll remember the diagram from elementary school that shows a series of steps tracing the path of water from the mountains to the ocean. This transfer of water is important to anglers because it dictates where we find streams, if they sustain fish, and what to expect with a particular weather pattern. This presents anglers with all kinds of situations. So let's look at some of those features found in our fisheries. As brooks, creeks, streams, and rivers flow downhill, they form riffles, runs, pools, and glides. Each section of water may speed up, slow down, deepen, shallow, and flow around bends, creating the spots where fish hide, feed, and rest. As if this wasn't interesting enough, the riparian zones around these waterways help control water quality, reduce erosion, attract wildlife, and provide shade, which are all important characteristics in attracting fish. This makes fishing a little more fun, but it may also present some challenges.
No! Lost my clouser.
I should also note that how the waterway is supplied will also affect the characteristics of the ecosystem, in turn affecting the quality of the fishing. Without getting too detailed, freestone streams are supplied from runoff like rain and snowmelt, which fluctuate throughout the season. Spring creeks, on the other hand, originate from the outflow of an aquifer, where pressurized underground water is forced through the earth. These waterways are typically cool and clean with stable water levels. Ponds and lakes are generally slow or non-moving bodies of water, either man-made or naturally occurring. They appear expansive compared to the narrow waterways we briefly touched on, but they too have key areas fish seek to suit their needs. Aside from the bottom contour, heavy cover, and river mouths, new anglers should know that most lakes are thermally stratified, which also dictates where fish go. If you've ever jumped into a lake and tried to touch the bottom, you've felt this temperature change firsthand. Each zone may also have a different oxygen content, density, salinity, and light penetration, which affects where fish can survive. Zones can change throughout the year because of a phenomenon called turnover, which is the mixing of the water column, but beginners don't need to worry about stratification too much. I just wanted to plant the seed early. Fishing tight to structure and cover are not the only factor for targeting fish in lakes, but keying in on these areas will be more productive than fishing open water at random. Inshore fisheries have a unique series of structure that most anglers overlook when they first try fishing the coast. It comes with a steep learning curve, so little research and experimentation is needed before you can start catching fish. Back bays, inlets, and beaches are all subject to tidal influence, which causes the speed, direction, and height of the water to fluctuate regularly. This drives fish to different areas throughout the day, so anglers need to get familiar with these variables. To add another layer of complexity, conditions like wind, ambient light, and moon phases need to be considered because they too determine where fish will hold. I'm going to cover inshore fishing in depth later, so for now we'll just talk about the key points for beginners. Fishing an open beach can be a tremendous waste of time if you don't know what you're doing, which is why I suggest beginners stick to estuaries, inlets, and back bays in general. Most people cast their lure straight out as far as they can, but they miss all the structure that concentrates fish. Here are some important areas you need to know about. Sandbars run parallel to the beach, creating troughs or little highways that fish swim through, cruising for food. Cuts in the sandbars where water is sucked out into the ocean are like a conveyor belt of food for game fish. Holes, points, lips, and other areas of change are places to target because they can also congregate fish. The toughest part of the equation is timing, and the conditions that allow us to predict where fish will be. I'll go further into detail on inshore structure when I explain the tide and conditions in another video. For now, just worry about finding structure. Trout like current because it forces water over their gills. This makes breathing easy because all they have to do is open their mouths. The same current also pushes their food towards them, so they don't usually have to move far to find nutrition. Most trout sit just outside of strong currents where they can conserve their energy waiting for something to drift into their strike zone. When they're ready to eat, they dip into moving water to grab their meal, then head back to soft water. Fallen trees, submerged boulders, and steep drop-offs all provide a break from the current that fish use to wait for insects and struggling bait fish to drift into their strike zone. Pools are another key area for trout because they can stay deep to regulate their temperature. Deep water also allows them to stay hidden from birds, so it's a safe place for them. Plunge pools provide even more protection because the broken water adds a layer of opacity, further concealing fish. Undercut banks and overhanging limbs also offer hiding spots or shady areas of cover that fish seek out regularly. When we talk about the places trout occupy, there are several types. Holding lies offer cover and comfortable water, but no food. A trout may use this area to rest or hide, but they'll need to move in order to eat. Feeding lies provide comfortable water and food, but no cover. Trout can stay here for extended lengths to eat, but they'll be vulnerable to predators. Prime lies have suitable water, food, and cover, which allow trout to rest, feed, and avoid predation. These spots are usually occupied by the most dominant trout in the stream, so thoroughly fishing them is a must. This is one of my favorite spots on a stream I used to fish all the time because it produced a bite 8 times out of 10. The log extends into the water quite a bit, where leaves get jammed underneath, offering a good break from the current. The area directly under and behind the log is a bit deeper than the riffle it sits in, so I think the leaves probably offer a bit of overhead protection, depending on how they're packed in. Swinging a lure into this area often produced a very strong take from brown trout, anywhere from 8 to 16 inches. I just can't seem to get many takes on video. Bass are another species that like to ambush their prey, so fishing structure and cover is going to be a much better plan than relying on luck. Casting around docks, weeds, lily pads, brush piles, slopes, and tight to walls is going to be much more productive than fishing open water, hoping for a bite. When I first started fishing, throwing a jig or Senko tight to the corner of this damn wall became very productive for me. Walls can radiate heat, create shade, and act as a barrier to bait fish, where bass can pin a meal, so it's no wonder I did well here. Inshore species are a little harder to predict, so fishing areas of change will be your best bet when searching for a bite. You'll want to probe spots with good current and lots of structure, like submerged rocks, drop-offs, inlets, lagoons, rips, and more. Again, I want to point out that the flow of water changes direction between incoming and outgoing tide, so some of these areas may not always hold fish. I like inlets because game fish often stack up here in heavy current, waiting for food forms to drift into their faces. This bridge was a game changer in my early days because it concentrates hungry fish in a small area, provides good current, and offers overhead protection. In order to locate structure, you've got to find a place to fish. I'll provide you with a few options to try, but keep in mind there are still other methods you can utilize. Asking a friend is a good starting point. Even if they don't fish, they may know a few places through family, friends, or common knowledge. If you're lucky enough to have a friend who fishes, ask them to be your guide for a day. Just don't expect them to give away their best spots. Tackle shops will usually give you 1 or 2 good spots to check out, but they're more likely to be highly pressured areas. FYI, it's usually customary to buy something in the store for the exchange of this information, even if it is a small purchase. Your state's DNR website will show places to fish, stocking sites, access points, sampling data, and other points of interest. More importantly, it will provide info on legal access, creel limits, and gear to help you avoid breaking any regulations while you're fishing there. Online maps work well to see what's nearby, how to get there, and where the waterway leads. Using the satellite function can give you an idea of what a spot will look like, but in most cases, the images will be dated and the views limited, so there will still be a bit of mystery there. Fishing forums can provide information, but seeking out exact details is frowned upon because nobody wants to spot burn. If you're going on a trip or struggling to find fish, forum members will usually give you a nudge in the right direction. Physically looking for spots has paid off for me. You just need to make sure you can legally fish them before you wet a line. I can't tell you how many times I've followed a river in my car, on foot, or in a kayak, and had the water all to myself. There's an element of exploration in this method that I enjoy, because leaving your cell phone at home and living in the moment is so much better than anything else. Hiring a guide is a great way to learn how to approach a piece of water, but I don't recommend this as the first approach because of the cost. You won't learn a ton of places to fish, but you may actually get to catch a fish the first time you're there, which will keep you coming back for more. Enough for now. Go find some spots. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.